It's actually running really good, but I suspect we might have a vacuum leak, which wouldn't be surprising. Not a whole lot to it. Well, that's wrong. Better fix that. So that's got to go on the inside, like so. That doesn't look right. Huh. The last time it was here, it was real cold-blooded. Doesn't seem to be the case today. It's running good. Okay, that's far enough. Yeah, it sounds fine. And check engine light is not on, even though it's got 3 stored codes. Does it even have a check engine light? It says check gauges. Shouldn't there be a check engine light? I don't know, we gotta look into that. Kinda seems like the charging system might not be working either. Probably can't see it, but it's only showing like 10 volts on the battery. Alright, well, we got some work to do. It's back. 96 Chevy K3500. Last time I fixed everything he wanted except the fuel gauge. I guess customer's always right. Let's see what we can do. It's probably going to be kind of a hatchet job. Like I said, this is it's an obsolete system. There's not a lot of parts or information, so we're going to have to kind of make it up as we go along. Got some other stuff too. I guess the washer pump doesn't work. Something going on with the battery. And he asked me about the air conditioning. We're probably not going to get to that. Let's get a look here. Got the diagram right here. So this hose comes from the charcoal canister. This thing must be a purge vacuum diagnostic switch. And then it goes into the purge solenoid, which must be this guy right here. So there is a hose between the switch and the purge valve. So is that just a vent? Kind of seems like it. So maybe that's okay. It only shows one way in and one way out, and we've got both of those, so I think we're all right. Just gonna very gingerly clean this mass airflow sensor. It's a little crusty. As far as I can tell, this is all okay. Mass airflow is still reading a little bit high. But it's not crazy. So short term's right on the money. Yeah, we're less than 10 total fuel trim. So I'm not going to get too excited about it. Seems okay. All right, let's move on to something else. I don't want to get stuck on this. I know, Max. I don't like the flies either. Okay, we've got a parasitic draw. So it's about 250 milliamps. That's way too much. It's probably about 10 times what it should have. Look at them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyway, I think I see the problem. The clock display on the radio is on all the time. And if you remember in the last video, he mentioned that the radio presets weren't saving when he turned off the key. That's because this radio battery fuse was removed. And now we see why. So, something going on with that radio. I don't know if we can fix it or not. We better try. So, I think it's pretty easy to get it out of there. You just gotta pop off the dash bezel. It should slide right out. This is quite a contraption. Obviously, it was not designed to be serviced. This is the back side of that VFD display. And there's a big transistor here. Bet that's got something to do with it. Yep. Okay, well that's not very helpful. Oh boy. Kind of seems like it's okay. So what else we got going on here? That's a jump. No, that's a diode. Looks like there's another transistor here. 1.6 ohms. So that one appears to be a dead short. Okay. That's something to go on. So it looks like this little transistor right here has become a jumper. It says emitter base collector. Yeah, it's shorted between the emitter and the collector. Okay, well, let's pop that thing out of there. Let's see if we can find a replacement. There we go. 7042. All right, stand by. Might seem like I just pulled a rabbit out of a hat, and that's basically what happened. I stumbled into the problem pretty quickly, which is lucky because just between you and me, I don't actually know how this works. So we have a VFD display, a vacuum fluorescent display. It works kind of like an old vacuum tube. There's a bunch of grid connections that control the individual segments, like which one's turned on. Then there's a single filament that kind of lights the thing up, for lack of a better term. And this guy takes some juice, in the neighborhood of 200 milliamps, I guess. And it's being controlled by this big transistor, the first one that I tested. And it's working fine. But it's actually being controlled by a second, smaller transistor. And that one was shorted. It was a dead short between the emitter and the collector. That basically means that this transistor was keeping this transistor turned on and keeping the filament turned on and keeping the display lit up. Now you might think that that transistor is kind of overkill for 200 milliamps, which it probably is, but I think the reason they're doing that is to make the display dimmable. So they're running this transistor in its linear range. They're basically using it like a variable resistor to dim this display, which it can do, but of course the side effect is heat, and that bigger transistor package is better able to deal with that heat. We got pretty lucky though. It's a lot easier to diagnose something that's stuck on and won't turn off than something that's stuck off and won't turn on, at least in my opinion. I can't find any numbers that mean anything to anyone on this old transistor, so I'm going to replace it with the generic NPN. It's a 2N3904, and we'll just see what happens. Okay, the battery fuse is in and the clock backlight is not on. So that's good. Go ahead and put that thing back in. Does it still work? Yes. And if I turn the lights on, it does dim. There we go. So it works as expected. And we're down to 63 milliamps. I guess we can live with that. I would think on a vehicle this age, you could get down below 50, but beggars can't be choosers. Let's move on to something else. That should be the windshield washer pump. So if we push this, Looks like it's working. I think we just got a bad pump. Just checking the resistance on the pump. So 30 ohms is probably plausible, but it's probably not supposed to be 30 mega ohms. So we got a bad pump. It's probably some kind of brushed DC motor. There's a chance the brush is just hanging up. We got to get to it anyway. Maybe we could try to do some Fonzie percussive maintenance. Let me see how big a deal it is to tunnel down to that thing. I'm really going out of my way to avoid working on that fuel gauge. Well, that was fun. Of course, it was completely full. And I found where our fuzzy little friends have been hiding. Wonder how many wires they've chewed through. Hook this up to power. Let's see, which one's what? Not so much. Okay, needs a new pump. I've run out of side quests, so we're going to have to tackle the main problem. He wants to revive the auxiliary fuel tank and fix the fuel gauge, which is going to be a challenge because this is quite a system that GM came up with. They took the original fuel tank, they added a second fuel tank, a second sending unit, a second fuel pump, a control module, and a relay. And the way it works is when the primary fuel tank gets more than, I think it's 20% lower than the auxiliary fuel tank, this fuel pump switches on and it pumps fuel from the rear tank into the front tank. And when their levels are more or less equal, the pump shuts off. And it does that until both tanks are empty. That's all controlled by this control module, which lives right underneath the cab, right in harm's way. I know this sending unit is bad. I also know that the gauge in the cluster is bad, and we can't fix that. The motor in the cluster is obsolete. You can't do anything about it. So we're going to have some kind of an aftermarket fuel gauge, and the sending unit is available, but looking at that tank, I think we're mostly wasting our time, but I guess we have to try. So the problem is these tabs that hold the lock ring, they're just paper thin. Boy, it's gonna be uphill to get that to seal. I'm gonna say it hasn't worked in a long time based on the lovely smell. There. Okay. Let's see if I can vacuum that stuff up without getting on the front page of the newspaper. That's about what I expected. This tab is gone. This one's holding on by a thread. The other three they're not far behind. And you see how not round the hole is there? We'll never get that to seal up. So it's a plastic tank, which is good, because it shouldn't corrode. And it has this channel for all the accumulation to run off, but you see the top of it has sunk down. And it just turned into a soaking pool for all the salt and God knows what to sit there and corrode these steel tabs, which they're molded into the top of the plastic tank. And they get all rust jacked and puffy, and it distorts this hole. How are you going to get an O-ring to seal on that? It's not going to happen. Let me think about it. We've been down this road before. If you remember that Chevy Colorado I had, same thing happened to it. Of course, it only had one fuel tank, and they didn't have a whole lot of choice. This is, in my opinion, an option that does not necessarily have to be fixed. Oh, baby. Guess we got power. This is the fuel pump for the rear tank. And that's 12 volts. It's completely dead. So that's another nail in the coffin. I do have a pump here, though. and it looks pretty similar. In fact, it might even be the same pump. I don't know. Shouldn't take any pressure. I mean, it just literally dumps into the other tank. Does something. Yeah, it's good. All right, so I guess we could use that, but I don't know. We're just gonna put that back for now. Pretend like we didn't see it. Just to satisfy my curiosity, I hooked up a test light where the fuel pump should be, and I hooked up a potentiometer where the sending unit should be. This is a standard GM 0 to 90 ohm sending unit. So if I set that for 90 ohms, that should tell the module that that tank is full, and I know the front tank is about half full, so the fuel pump should be on, and it is not. So I don't think the module is working. That's the relay, and this is the fuel pump balance control module. I think that's what it's called. Pretty sure you're not supposed to be able to just crack it open. So looks like there's some glue or something that has long since given up, and inside is this vulnerable little control board. So that's not going to last very long in an unsealed container. We should be able to bench test it though. Looks pretty simple. I think I screwed up my test on the truck. Looks like the relay cannot turn on unless the main fuel pump is running. And it only comes on for about a second when you turn the key on, and then it goes off until the oil pressure switch closes. I think I've got this set up. I'm going to demonstrate how to start an electrical fire. So that's the gauge, and it's kind of tweaking. So I'm guessing the output of this thing is some kind of pulse width modulation. At this point, both tanks are full. If I drop the front tank down to half, the light kicks on. That's our pump. So now it's pumping from the rear tank into the front tank. And if we drop the rear tank down, that goes out. So if we drop this again, should come back on. There it is. Okay. So then if we fill it back up, everything goes back to normal. The other cool thing is that somehow it averages the reading from both sending units. So if I put that one at empty and that one at empty, it goes to empty. If I put that one at half, it goes to about a fourth. If I put this one at empty and this one at full, yeah, I think our scaling's a little bit off. It's a little bit off, but it's got the right idea. So a couple of things. We can't hook the gauge directly to this module because you see how the needle's kind of flickering? This must be some kind of pulse width modulated output. So we're going to have a big capacitor or something to smooth that out. And then we're going to need some resistors, I think, because the scale is a little bit off. But if we don't use the module, that won't matter. This gauge should hook right up to one or the other of the sending units. So, kind of a cool system. It's complicated, but it's clever, I gotta say. Okay, I'm gonna tear this down before it burns down. I had a chat with the owner. I don't think we're gonna fix the auxiliary fuel tank. It needs a pump, a sending unit, and a tank. The big problem here is that they only use this dual tank setup in the cabin chassis trucks. And I think even then it was an option. I also think the diesel and the gas truck setup was slightly different. What I'm getting at is that this tank does not exist. And anything we could find used is going to be just as bad or worse than what we already have. So we're basically stuck trying to sort of patch this thing together, glue it up like I did with that Colorado. And that might work. I don't know how long it would last. So basically what we need to do is get rid of everything inside that circle. right, I sucked out all the old fuel. Here's a tip, don't overfill your fluid extractor, especially not with rotten old gasoline. It's gonna stink in here for a month. I've applied a generous bead of RTV, and that's all that's gonna hold this on. Okay, I'll put some paint on that, and it's like it was never there. Got to find something to block the lines too. Should be the middle wire. Should be that guy. Boy, that's some tough stuff. What am I doing here? Do I want to splice that back together? Okay, no, it's not gonna matter. Cap off the old wire. Put that back in. All right, that's good. Let's make sure the pump still works. Sounds like it. That's done. Sorry, I didn't record a whole lot of wiring that fuel gauge. There's nothing to see. It's like doing laparoscopic surgery. You got your hand stuck in the dash trying to squeeze wires together. Basically, we need 12 volt power, so I stole it from this guy right here, which is hot and run, and it normally feeds the instrument panel. It's already got a fuse, so I just spliced right into that wire right behind the fuse box. And then we also needed the backlight, so I tapped right into this wire right behind the fuse box. This feeds all the backlights on the dash. It's also dimmable, so now our aftermarket gauge is also dimmable. The only other wire we needed was from the sending unit up to the gauge. So I just ran a dedicated wire, chopped it and ran a wire under the truck up through the firewall. I just followed the wires they ran for the trailer connector and right up to that gauge. So really not much to it. Light bulb goes to the negative side. The signal, power. Looks about right. There's the backlight. And it's dimmable. I taped up all the connectors. I'm going to stash the balance control module in this little storage box for safekeeping. And if he ever wants to revive the auxiliary fuel tank in the future, everything will be here. We fixed the parasitic draw. We fixed the washer pump. We mothballed the auxiliary tank. And we hooked up a fuel gauge. That's the whole list, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I wasn't planning on making this video. I thought it was kind of interesting. Thanks for following along. I'm gonna try to find my toolbox. It's under there somewhere. Good news and bad news. My toolbox is slightly cleaner. That concludes the good news. Can you guess the bad news? He got it home, and it will not shift into park. Or low. That's kind of what it does. I had the whole dash apart. I figured I pulled something loose or somehow caused this problem. But what's really crazy is standing here, it'll fail every time. But if I get down on the floor and look up at the shift mechanism, it works perfectly. And I tried to be super careful and not touch the brake pedal or jostle anything. Could not figure out what was going on. It has a bad shift cable, a really bad shift cable. And the bad spot was right in the middle of the floor mat. So with my dead weight on top of it, it was enough to kind of hold the cable together and make it function. But as soon as I stood up, it would go back to how it was. Needs new shift cable. Not really a big deal. The coolant leak is a big deal. Gotta be the intake manifold gaskets. It's just a small block Chevy, so the thermostat and all the coolant passages are in the intake manifold. It's gonna be a big job. It's like Grand Central Station for everything under the hood. It all connects to the intake manifold. Huh. What do you suppose that is? Guess we'll save it for later. Oh, yeah, right. Oh. I think it's kind of pointless. So now what do we do? It's loose, but fun fact, you cannot remove the intake without removing the valve covers. I don't know, are all these old V8s that way? I guess I don't work on that many of them. You're supposed to remove the power steering pump and this whole bracket. I didn't want to do that, now it's coming back to bite me. Oh yeah, I gotta get the spaghetti monster freaking bracket off the back there. Should be able to get this thing out of here. Oh, that's a chunker. Good grief. Don't think that was going to come out of there. Neighbors, is there anything left? Maybe. That'll have to do. Better than it was. All cleaned up, ready to go back together. Despite my grumbling, it's really not that bad of a job. The only actual problem I had was the EGR tube, and if I would have been thinking, it unthreaded off the exhaust manifold, no problem. So if I would have just taken it loose down there, I probably could have pulled it out with the intake and saved it. But luckily, they made bajillions of these engines, and it's not hard to get parts. So got a new EGR tube, and then I bought a whole gasket kit. It's actually cheaper than buying the parts individually. Even comes with new bolts with sealant, because some of those holes are through holes. And then we've got to use the RTV at the front and the rear of the valley. Hope this stuff works better than it smells. Here we go. Oh God, hasn't gotten any lighter. Oh my God, look at that monstrosity. I bet the guy that designed that's the vice president now. Okay, I'm gonna check my squeeze out on the RTV. That's the only thing I'm really concerned about. I'm pretty sure I smeared it around when I was dropping that down on there. I'm gonna stick in the distributor. I marked everything before I took it apart, so hopefully we'll get it back on the right tooth. The plastic inside the quick connect for the heater hose disintegrated. So I was gonna replace it. I touched it with a wrench and it just snapped it right off. I don't know what it's made from. Some kind of industrial cheese, I guess. I can't even get an easy out to bite into it. Ah, this is a waste of time. I guess we're gonna have to drill it out. I wonder if we can just break it. There we go. There's a big chunk of it. Yeah. Okay. What do we need? 1/2-inch pipe tap, maybe? There it is. Okay. Good. That distributor cap is not looking too good. Rotor's not too bad. We're gonna go ahead and replace them both. Now's the time to do it. Had one more casualty, the elbow on the PCV tube. Super common problem, super common engine. Parts were on the shelf at the local store, so no big deal. I think we're just a few satisfying clicks away from being done with this project. This is from back when GM had their own connector division, and they were not afraid to use it. I think the engine is done. I also installed the shift cable. It's not that interesting. You probably wouldn't want to hear about how it's twice as long as it needs to be, or how there isn't enough room between the bracket and the front axle drive shaft to actually remove or install the cable, or how you have to wear the truck like a straitjacket to make the connection to the shift lever. It's done, it works, and that's all anybody cares about. I guess let's fire it up and make sure it actually runs. It should, and then maybe double check the timing. Should be about it. We're at -9 on the cam, so you need to turn the distributor a little bit counterclockwise. Better. It's supposed to be between 0 and 2. That's as far as I can go. I'm on top dead center on the engine. The distributor rotor is pointing towards what they call the 8 mark, which is where number 1 would be on the cap. And then if you can see in my mirror there, we're lined up with the mark on the distributor from where I pulled it. So everything checks out. I just can't get it to correct. So I'm guessing there's some wear in the distributor gear or something, and we can't quite get there. Nothing I can do about it right now. Now it's actually worse. We're done. It's actually not quite as bad this time.